What can I do to help my husband? He's just gotten a very serious diagnosis, and he's very, very fearful.
Well, how are you doing? Are you fearful too?
Well, I'm trying not to think about it, but I have pains in my stomach.
When you do think about it, do you feel fear?
Yes.
So you're not in a position to help him because you're as fearful as he is. And so when you talk about it, you'll just bang around there together in that fearful place. So the first thing you've got to do is to practice feeling hopeful until you're sure that you're more hopeful than fearful, and then you'll be of great advantage to him.
Okay.
So talk to us about whatever it is that's making you feel fearful. So now, my husband has been diagnosed with something scary.
Yes.
And I'm scared. Or my husband has been diagnosed with something scary and I'm feeling all right about it. Now, do you think that it's wrong for you to feel good about something that scares everybody else? This is a big question. Do you have the right, first of all, to feel good under bad conditions?
Yes.
Well, that's the first big step, because if you believe that you have the right, then the next question is, setting your husband and his diagnosis aside completely, would you rather feel good or bad?
Good.
Do you think it's possible to focus upon something that makes you feel bad and feel good?
No.
Well, it is, and that's the work you've got to do. In other words, you could change the subject and just focus upon things that make you feel good, but that would not change the way you feel about this thing that makes you feel scared. So the work is, I've got to focus upon something that right now makes me feel afraid and coax myself into being able to not feel so afraid of it. That's the work. That's the emotional journey. I've got to feel less afraid.
And how do you do that?
You do it by wanting it enough to keep trying. Let's try here. So, you still having that fearful feeling?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can coax that out. You'll know that you've done it if you start feeling relief. Now here, you're really going to like this. This is so important. Your assignment right now with us is to take an emotional journey, which means your assignment right here with us is to change your vibration, which changes everything, changes your power of influence. You can help your husband once you change your power of influence. So your work right now is to take an emotional journey, which means your work is to change your vibration, which means your work is to feel better, which means your work is to find relief. That's your assignment right now. Your assignment is not to try to find a cure. Your assignment is not to try to find a path that will bring this about. Your assignment is so much more simple than that. Your assignment is to move from fear to ease. So with that simple assignment, just ramble. Try to detach yourself enough from the diagnosis, from the prognosis, from whatever your husband is feeling. Try to detach yourself from it enough that you can focus upon the subject and feel good while you do it right here and now.
Okay. He's had this diagnosis, but deep inside, I don't believe it. It doesn't seem to me as if he's really ill. It seems to me almost as if this is a modern medical fairy tale kind of thing. You know, it's you go to a doctor and he finds you sick. And deep inside, somehow, he looks good to me. He doesn't have a feeling of illness to me.
Well, you're right there. In other words, as you said that feels to us like your more stable feeling. In other words, the fear that was amplified by the recent diagnosis and by your husband's response to it was a sort of blip on your radar. But what you said to us just now feels like your truer set point, doesn't it? Whereas we can feel that you feel that. So when we say, are you afraid? What your answer is, well, I can make myself afraid if I focus upon it in fearful ways and really listen in the way that the doctor is pointing it. But I have to work harder at feeling afraid than I do about the way I really feel. Would you say that's accurate?
That's true.
Then you're in a very good place of helping your husband. So can you hear yourself conveying that to him? When you, and we know you have, when you convey that to him, does he go along with you and your stable, secure feeling, or does he argue for the limitation of the sickness?
He argues for the limitation of the sickness.
So the doctor has more credibility with him than you do.
Always.
So now you're in a position where you're worried about what he's doing with his vibration, because you know what he's doing with his vibration is going to affect his experience.
Exactly.
So the emotional journey that you're taking is not about going from fear to security about the illness, because you're already secure. Your emotional journey is going from worrying about what your husband's doing in creating his own reality and not worrying about what your husband's doing in creating his own reality. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In other words, the emotional journey that you need to take here is about feeling secure in your husband's ability to manage his own life experience or to come round to his own wellness. So do you believe that he can? What's your emotional set point on that?
Not really. I mean, I don't really believe that he can.
You want to, you'd like to hope, but so your
Yes.
belief is in a place of disbelief. In other words, you don't believe that he can, but you need to believe that he can before you can feel good. Yeah?
Yes.
So that's the journey that we want to take with you right now. In this little bit of time here, in this focused energy, try to move yourself on that. Try to move yourself from not believing that he can clean up his vibration and do it to believing or hoping that he can clean up his vibration. Make that effort. Don't lose sight of what you're doing.
Okay.
You just want to give yourself relief. You're not trying to fix him. You're not trying to make him well. You're trying to take an emotional journey where you feel better. The feeling is you're not optimistic about his getting hold of this, and we want to be.
Yes.
So what you're wanting to do is talk yourself into feeling more optimistic about him getting hold of this. Has he been an abject failure at everything he's tried?
Oh, no.
Oh, so he does accomplish some things. Like what?
Oh, he's been successful in business.
Yeah.
He's...
You mean he can focus and make things happen?
Oh, yeah.
And the world responds to him in a positive way?
Very.
So you don't see him as someone who is incapable of making up his mind and getting what he wants.
Not at all.
But on this subject, he's a little tenuous because he's got an expert giving him bad information.
Exactly.
So have you ever seen him look out into a marketplace or look at something that didn't look the way he wanted it to be? And have you ever seen him just use his will and make things turn out even though there was evidence that was to the contrary? You ever seen him do that?
Yeah.
For example?
There can be something, say, a product that shows up and I look at it and I say, it's not really working well. And he says, no, it is. It's fine. Let go of your doubts. It's fine.
So he does understand this. He understands the idea of mind over matter. He understands the idea of using his focused sort of willpower in order to bring things about. You've seen him have that success in his experience, yes?
Yes, but not in health things.
But now you just lost sight of what your goal was. Oh, because we were leaning there, we were almost there, and then you snatched back and got something that made you feel worse. Now, why would you do that? You get the sense of what we're talking about? In other words, that's the work. You don't want to reach back and get that stuff that makes you feel worse. You want to reach out and find that stuff that makes you feel better, and you want to practice that better feeling stuff until you can say with confidence, my husband is a focuser. And sure, this has got him sort of knocked off of his balance a little bit. It would anybody. But I've seen him regain his balance relative to what? Where have you seen him regain his balance? You ever seen him off his balance and get it back?
Yeah.
For example?
Oh, he's a golfer. He can look outside and say, well, it looks like rain, but I'll go anyway because it'll probably be okay. You know, it'll probably clear and probably will
It's
work
really
out.
as his nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
Aren't you beginning to feel foolish about your doubt in him? In other words, he's not going to have any trouble getting hold of this once he relaxes with the idea of it a little bit. In other words, his resources are going to return and he's going to regain his balance like he always does. And he's going to apply himself successfully. And he has the benefit of having optimistic you, who isn't really even worried about this diagnosis, tenderly coaching him toward positive expectation. Now you feel better, don't you?
I do.
In other words, in the first emotional journey we tried to drag you along on, you didn't even need. You were already there. And the second emotional journey, you came very quickly, in very short time, you see. So as you find doubts creeping in, and they might, just drown them out with things that feel better until you stand in that confident place. You're going to be bowled over by your power of influence when you are steadily in that place of expecting your husband to manage his life. He's been managing it so far and doing extremely well, and there's no reason for him to stop now over some pesky thing that really has more to do with what the doctor thinks than it does to do with what he thinks. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My questions pertain to my 5-year-old son. He will not listen to me.
Good.
No women. Men, a little better. Teacher told me, she goes, can you get him to listen to me? I say, he gonna listen to me. What are you talking about? And
Who is he listening to?
I guess his own head, because he told me, he said, I live my life my way and you do things sort of your way. He said, this is way. He said,
He must be listening to us.
yes. And then he'll say, well, you said, Abraham said, he said, I want to have fun. So the teacher said to him, she said, well, you don't listen to me, Joseph, because you don't understand or you don't want to. He said, I don't want to. So she called me again. She said, well, he put a hole in this paper. He didn't want to do it, but then the next day he wanted to do it, so he did it. And I said, Joseph, you can't do that. You can vibrate what you want when you get in your house, but you're mine now, so you got to vibrate with me. He said, nah, this is the back and forth, the pulling, just the listening part. And then my mother gets all crazy. Oh, you should spank him. You should do this. You should do that. It didn't kill me. It didn't kill you. All that,
Well, here's the thing. As Joseph is doing pretty much what he wants to do, if he could maintain that, when we visit with him 15 or 20 years from now, and he is experiencing not only outrageous success in all areas of his life, but he is one of the most joyful people we've ever met, and we say, Joseph, what is your secret? And he would say, I had a driving influence coming forth from within that I listened to louder than everybody else put together. Oh, my mother tried. Yes, she did try. She even threatened to throw me out of the house. But I did not let anything dissuade me from my own guidance system. Now, we're playing with you a little bit, but it is mothers like you that have left so many of you as the walking wounded that you are. In other words, so many of you are not trusting your own guidance because you've yielded to the guidance of so many others who are ill-equipped to really guide you, you see. And when you think about it, that teacher is guiding Joseph so that she'll get from him what she wants, and you're guiding him so that you'll get what you want, and who gets to guide him so that he will get what he wants? And that's the point that he's trying to make with everyone, you see. And we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but we're on his side.
But what about his age? I mean, isn't he kind of young to be, you know what? I just don't want to be an adult that doesn't listen to anyone. And then, it could.
Oh, well, then our purposes are crossed because we want him to be an adult that doesn't listen to anyone. We want all of you to be adults who are not so controverted by what everybody else thinks that you contradict your own vibration and disallow what you really want. We know what you're getting at, and here's what we would do. So here you have this little one who is rather clear about who he is, still remembering, and who is throwing some of what you're trying to teach him back at you, and who is giving you some grief here and there by not conforming. So, as you think about him and the action journey that he's taking, you have a lot of options here. In other words, you can watch it and be upset about it, or you can watch it and get into alignment with it. So tell us some of the positive aspects that you feel of him being sort of self-directed. Is there any advantage at all in that?
Yes, he has his own mind, and he's not a conformist. Neither was I when I was his age.
Yes.
He tells you just how he feels, so you know where he's coming from.
Yeah.
He's not a phony person.
Yes.
I think that in some ways it will help him.
But beyond that, can you feel from what you've heard today that there's tremendous value in making up your mind and not wavering?
Yes.
And so, do you really want him to be someone who makes up his mind and doesn't waver unless somebody else that's bigger and stronger and has more influence can get in his face and make him change his mind? In other words, are you wanting to teach him disempowerment or self-empowerment?
I want him to be self-empowered.
And so the only time that it conflicts with you is when his self-empowerment disagrees with your idea of what he should do?
When a teacher calls me, I just don't want to be a parent that's steady in the office because he won't do what they want.
But can you have it both ways? And this is the thing that we really want to put out to you. Can you have a child that is self-empowered, who really knows who he is, and a child that kowtows to what everybody else wants at the same time? And how do you help him define who he should listen to and who she shouldn't? In other words, do you want everyone who stands in the role of teacher to be someone who gets his undivided attention? Because if that's the case, then don't you want to scrutinize the teachers? Don't you want to find out what they're trying to motivate him to? Don't you want to find out who they are and what their real intent is? In other words, wouldn't you like to know if they're leaning him toward voting Democrat or leaning him toward voting Republic or leading him toward being a Christian or leading him toward... Wouldn't you like to know what their inner motivation is? And wouldn't it be really hard for you to sort all of that out?